The first part of Outlander Season 7 has drawn to a close, and there was one moment in particular towards the end of Episode 8 that showed us that a dark turn could well be on the cards when the show returns in the early parts of next year for Season 7 Part 2. If it wasn't already dark enough, with Jem being taken by Rob and Roger being separated from Bree, Archbug popped up right at the end and showed us that he was standing by what he said in Episode 3 about seeking revenge on Ian. So with that, I thought I'd reveal what happened in the novel with Archbug and give my theories and predictions on how his plan will be adapted into the show. So let's get into it. Here is Archibald Bug's plan revealed in Outlander Season 7 Part 2. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. Within the final moments of Episode 8, we saw that a character that we hadn't seen for about 5 episodes made an appearance. This was Archbug. The last time that we saw Archbug was in Episode 3 of the show, where the funeral for his wife was taking place, Mrs. Medina Bug. Medina Bug was killed by Ian when both Jamie and Ian went to retrieve the gold that Archbug said that they'd never find, and only in retaliation Ian killed Mrs. Bug, because she fired at Jamie. Ian wasn't aware that it was Medina. He thought that it was Arch, but even still, the plan was to never kill him. It was only to find the gold that Arch had stolen and to surprise him, and then take it off of him due to the fact that he was a thief. So Mrs. Bug being killed was a mistake, and you could sense that it weighed heavily on Ian's mind due to the reaction that he had. During the funeral for Medina, we saw that Ian went up to Arch and apologized for the fact that he killed her, and that he was willing to be punished by Arch for what he had done. Arch mentioned as a suggestion that he wanted to kill Rollo, Ian's wolf. But Ian refused to let him do that as his issue was with him. The final thing that we heard Archbug say to Ian, and the last time that we saw him in the show, was, "When you've got something worth taking, you'll see me again." And I guess that moment has now arrived with us seeing him right at the end of Season 7 Part 1, showing us that something dark is on the horizon. What does Archbug do in the novel? Within the novel, everything that I just mentioned happened. Ian killed Arch's wife, and the last thing that he said to him was that he'd see him again when something was worth taking. Within the novel, Archbug is actively trying to seek out and hunt down Ian because he feels as though it's time for him to act out that sweet revenge in the name of his wife. There is one part in the novel that I don't feel will happen though, because it occurred when Ian, Jamie, and Claire were navigating their way to Scotland. And within the show, with them already having touched land in the Highlands, the section in the novel where Arch takes a young child and is threatening them but ultimately lets them go, feels like something that won't really fit into the story now, as there's not really room for it. But there are a couple of parts that develop on from that. This happened before the Battle of Saratoga, but Arch comes across William and requests to know the location of Ian, to which Will responds by saying that he doesn't have a clue where he was at that moment. Then, following that, several months later, Archbug stumbles across Rachel and Rollo, and after recognizing Rollo for being the wolf that always accompanied Ian, he tried to attack her, because he believed that she was the very thing that would be worth taking away from Ian. Even if he wasn't there, news would travel to him, and he would then feel the effect of what he had done to Arch when he killed his wife. However, William was able to stop the attack from taking place and warned Arch off. But later on from that, Archbug was persistent in following them, and he tried to attack Rachel again, to which he was ultimately killed by Will, meaning that Archbug reached a fate that was no different to his wife, being killed by somebody else. So what will they do in the show? Personally, I feel as though they could follow a similar route in the show as to what they do in the novel. We saw that Arch recognized Rollo and now knows that Rachel is a dear friend of Ian's based on what it was that she said to him. So that initial connection has been made. With Arch looking over at Rachel as she walked off into the distance and not taking his eyes off of her at all, I feel there's definitely more to come with that. With Ian being on a completely different continent to her, he's not going to be able to protect Rachel from the danger that comes with Archbug numbing the connection. All throughout this season, it was mentioned how Will could have feelings for Rachel too. It was actually mentioned on the battlefield in the first Battle of Saratoga between himself and his friend before he died. So for Rachel to be going through his mind in that specific moment when there are far greater things that he should be concerned about, such as his life, it showed that he does care deeply for her. I initially thought that they'd be setting up a love triangle to take place between himself, Rachel, and Ian, but I actually think it's going to go far deeper than that, and rather than a love triangle, I think Will is going to essentially end up saving Rachel from Archbug whilst Ian isn't there and over in Scotland. I believe Arch will look to attack Rachel as a form of his revenge, and with Ian being gone, Rachel might start to naturally gravitate towards Will. He's a high-ranking soldier and he saved her life once before. I think when Will saved Rachel in the house when they were on the road, it could have actually been a subtle hint for what was to come with all that's going on with Arch. I don't think there will be a romantic spot between them, at least not on Rachel's side, and I think Rachel will still want to be with Ian. But from a geographical standpoint, Rachel and Will are extremely close to one another, and they're friendly. So I think when the time comes for Arch to carry out his plan in killing Rachel in order to hurt Ian in the same way that he was hurt by him, I think William will step in and ultimately end up killing Archbug, meaning that Rachel will be unharmed and will survive, which will also mean that Archbug will meet the same fate as to what he met in the novel and at the hands of the person who did it. This is only one direction that it could potentially go in when it unfolds in the next part of the season. The 7th season has run true to the novel for the most part. However, there are specifics that have been deviated from time to time. It could be different from this, and Ian could return, and Arch could wait until Ian is present so he can see the look on his face when he tries to seek revenge. Something which I think would be more fitting to Arch's evil nature, but I think the more logical approach to the story which would fit in with the timeline that was present for the remaining episodes would be the one that I just elaborated on, which focused on Will killing Arch with Ian being in Scotland. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see. It's a shame that we have to wait until 2024, but I guess the one positive thing about that is that we can theorize about lots of different things. Archbug is a character that I do actually enjoy watching when he's on screen. I rewatched episode 3 of season 7, and the scenes that had him in and the performance of the character is delivered in a really strong way, so by seeing him adopt a more evil tone as he looks to get even, I feel we're going to see some really strong performances. Bring on the next parts of season 7. So, there you have it. Archbug's plan revealed in Outlander Season 7 Part 2. If you want to see more videos such as Endings Explained, theories and predictions and character breakdowns, then click on the I button.